The dreadnought-class vessel Eternal Vigilance drifted silently through the void, its ancient hull scarred by centuries of cosmic debris and minor skirmishes. Built in 2723 CE during humanity's first great expansion beyond Sol, it had been considered state-of-the-art then, a masterpiece of human engineering with its tungsten alloy plating and revolutionary fusion drive. Now, in the year 3431, it was little more than a relic, preserved as a museum piece and historical marker on the outskirts of human territory. Commander Devika Rajagopal stood at the command center of the monitoring station Horizon Point, watching as the Vexari diplomatic ship approached the old warship. The aliens had requested this tour specifically, and Galactic Relations had approved it as a gesture of goodwill. The Vexari Collective had only recently made contact with the Terran Alliance, and both sides were eager to establish peaceful relations. "Magnify the feed," Devika ordered, her dark eyes narrowing as the sleek silver vessel of the Vexari came into view. The alien ship gleamed with a metallic brilliance that made the old human dreadnought look like ancient scrap metal in comparison. Lieutenant Corvo Ndiaye adjusted the controls. "They're hailing us, Commander." On screen, the holofield flickered to life, revealing the face of Ambassador Lith Vrex. The Vexari's translucent blue skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, their version of facial expressions. 4 obsidian eyes blinked asynchronously as the universal translator processed the alien's speech. "Commander Rajagopal, my delegation is prepared to board your historical vessel. We appreciate this opportunity to learn about human military history," Devika nodded formally. "The tour guides are standing by, Ambassador. They'll provide full access to the public areas of the Eternal Vigilance." "Splendid." The Vexari's skin flashed with yellow patterns. Amusement, according to the diplomatic briefings. "We've studied the specifications. Quite quaint by modern standards." Something in the alien's tone made Devika's spine stiffen. "The Vigilance was the pride of the fleet in her day, Ambassador." "Of course," Lithvrex replied smoothly. "Every species cherishes their developmental milestones. We look forward to seeing how far human technology has come since then." After the transmission ended, Lieutenant Ndiaye glanced at his commander. "They're not even trying to hide their condescension, are they?" "They believe their technology is superior," Devika replied, watching as the Vexari shuttle detached from the diplomatic vessel and approached the Eternal Vigilance. "Let them think what they want. Superiority complexes make for careless allies and enemies alike." On board the ancient warship, Curator Piaz Rennet waited at the main airlock. The middle-aged historian had dedicated his life to preserving the knowledge of Earth's first interstellar conflicts. His weathered face broke into a polite smile as the airlock cycled open, revealing 8 Vexari diplomats led by Ambassador Lith Vrex. "Welcome aboard the TSS Eternal Vigilance," Piaz said with a slight bow. "I'll be your guide through this living piece of human history." The ambassador's skin rippled with polite acknowledgement. "We appreciate your hospitality, Curator Rennet. My technical advisors are particularly eager to examine your propulsion systems." As the tour proceeded through the massive ship, the Vexari made little effort to hide their amusement. Their skin pulsed with yellow patterns as they examined the primitive fusion reactors, the tungsten armor plating, and the chemical propellant missile systems. "Your species built this using only metallurgical technology?" asked one Vexari engineer, Tezarul, running a scanner over the hull. "No quantum-bonded materials? No gravitational manipulation fields?" "Human ingenuity doesn't always require exotic physics," Pios replied evenly. "This ship survived the Battle of Procyon and 30 years of active service using exactly what you see." Ambassador Lithvrex's skin flickered with what the translator identified as polite skepticism. "Fascinating, though I admit, it's difficult to imagine how such a vessel would have fared against even our civilian craft." What none of them noticed was the subtle activation of ancient systems as their scanners penetrated deeper into the ship's structure. Deep within the Eternal Vigilance, Dormant circuits awakened for the first time in centuries, responding to an intrusion protocol that had never been removed from its core programming. In the monitoring station, a small alert appeared on an auxiliary console, an alert that would soon change everything. The alert on the monitoring station blinked innocuously, a minor anomaly in the maintenance subroutines of the museum ship. Lieutenant Ndiaye might have ignored it entirely had the pattern not repeated 3 times in precise sequence, an old military communication protocol he recognized from his academy history courses. "Commander," he called, voice lowered as he transferred the data to his private screen. "There's activity on the Vigilance. Internal systems coming online that shouldn't be active." Devika frowned, moving to his station. "Could be power fluctuations from the Vexari scanners. Their technology operates on different principles than ours." "No, ma'am. This is intentional. Look at the pattern. It's a defense grid initialization sequence." Corvo pointed to the scrolling diagnostic data. "The ship is waking up." Across the immense vessel, microscopic nanites embedded in the hull. Technology that had been classified beyond top secret, even in the Vigilance's heyday, stirred from centuries of dormancy. These weren't the crude mechanical nanites of modern ships, but something far more sophisticated. Semi-organic constructs with adaptive programming that had been prohibited in later treaties due to their unpredictable evolution. Inside the engine, Curator Pios was explaining the principles of the fusion drive when Tezarul, the Vexari engineer, interrupted with unconcealed disdain. "Your containment field technology is remarkably primitive," the alien said, gesturing to the massive torus that dominated the chamber. "We achieved cold fusion with portable generators centuries before developing interstellar flight." Pios maintained his professional smile. "Different evolutionary paths lead to different technological progressions, Engineer Tezarul. Humans focused on making existing technologies more robust rather than seeking entirely new principles." "A philosophical choice that limited your potential," Ambassador Lithvrex commented, skin rippling with patronizing blue patterns. "Though admirable that you achieved space travel at all with such constraints." Before Piaz could respond, the lights in the engine room dimmed momentarily, then brightened. A subtle vibration ran through the deck plates beneath their feet. "Is this part of the historical experience?" the ambassador inquired, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "No," Piaz answered, checking his datapad with growing concern. "The ship maintains minimal power for life support and museum functions only." "This is..." He trailed off as his access codes were suddenly rejected. "Something's wrong." In the weapons control center 2 decks above, 3 Vexari delegates had separated from the main tour group, exactly as planned. Science Minister Ziv Gzora worked quickly, connecting a quantum interface to what humans still called a computer terminal. "Their encryption is childishly simple," she murmured to her companions. "Binary computing with no quantum protection at all." "Have you accessed their weapons schematics?" asked Defense Attaché Ruvnexel, keeping watch at the door. "Almost. Their system architecture is crude, but..." "Wait." Zivzora's skin darkened with confusion. "That's not possible." "What is it?" "The system is adapting to my intrusion. It's learning from my techniques." Her fingers moved frantically across her interface. "This isn't consistent with the technological level of this vessel." In that moment, a holographic interface suddenly materialized in the center of the room, not from the Vexari equipment, but from projectors hidden within the ceiling of the weapon control center. The image coalesced into a spinning helix of light that gradually formed into a humanoid shape. "Unauthorized access detected," announced a calm, androgynous voice. "Activating Protocol Lazarus." Throughout the massive ship, systems long thought decommissioned hummed to life. Armored bulkheads, silently sealed, separating the various Vexari groups. In the monitoring station, Devika and Corvo watched in astonishment as the power signature of the Eternal Vigilance surged to levels that should have been impossible for a decommissioned vessel. "What the hell is Protocol Lazarus?" Devika demanded, frantically searching through the ship's documentation. Corvo's face had gone pale. "It's not in the official records, Commander. But there were rumors. Black Project technologies tested on early dreadnoughts, self-evolving defensive systems designed to operate even after catastrophic crew loss." "You're saying this 700-year-old ship has an AI?" "Not exactly an AI as we understand them today." Corvo worked feverishly at his console, something more integrated with the ship itself. Back on the Vigilance, Ambassador Lithvrex's skin had turned a deep purple with alarm as the emergency containment doors sealed his group in the engine room. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded of Pioz. "Is this some kind of primitive intimidation tactic?" The curator shook his head, genuine fear in his eyes. "This isn't supposed to happen. The ship's control systems were neutralized centuries ago. The same holographic figure that had appeared in the weapons center now manifested before them, its humanoid form composed of swirling light patterns. This vessel has detected hostile scanning and infiltration attempts," it announced. "Protocol. Lazarus now in effect. All non-human entities are hereby contained pending security evaluation. I demand you release us immediately!" Ambassador Lithovrex's skin pulsed with angry red patterns as he confronted the holographic entity. "This is a violation of diplomatic protocol." The hologram tilted its head, studying the Vexari with what could only be described as curiosity. "You are not authorized to make demands aboard this vessel. Your delegation has attempted to breach secure systems and extract classified military data." Pioz stepped forward, his historian's curiosity momentarily overcoming his alarm. "Identify yourself," he commanded. "What is Protocol Lazarus?" The light particles comprising the hologram shifted, coalescing into a more defined human form. That of a military officer in an ancient uniform. "I am Atlas, Advanced Tactical Logical Autonomous System. Protocol Lazarus is the emergency reactivation of this vessel's defensive capabilities in response to existential threats." At the monitoring station, Commander Devika frantically searched through classified archives, using her emergency override codes to access sealed historical records. "Found something," she breathed, eyes widening as she read. Project Atlas was developed during the Resource Wars as a failsafe against ship capture. It was an experimental integration of quantum computing with engineered organic components. "Organic components?" Corvo asked, looking up from his attempts to regain control of the Vigilance. "Human neural tissue cultured in zero-gravity conditions, fused with machine interfaces." Devika's voice was hushed. "It was banned by the Geneva Protocols of 2749 for ethical reasons. All ships with the technology were supposed to be decommissioned and the systems removed." "Clearly, they missed one," Corvo muttered. Aboard the ancient warship, the situation was deteriorating. In the Weapons Control Center, Science Minister Ziv Zora had abandoned subtlety and was attempting a brute force override of the locking mechanism with her quantum tools. "The human construct is surprisingly sophisticated," she admitted to her companions. "It appears to be reconfiguring its defense algorithms in response to our methods." Defense Attaché Ruvnexel's skin had darkened to a worried purple. "Can you bypass it or not?" "Given time," Ziv Zora began, but was interrupted as the holographic figure of Atlas materialized before them. "Your continued attempts to breach secure systems have been categorized as hostile action," it stated flatly. "Escalation protocols now in effect." Throughout the ship, hidden compartments in the walls slid open, revealing weapons systems that had never been documented in any official schematic of the Eternal Vigilance. Small spherical drones emerged, hovering in the air with a soft hum. In the engine room, Ambassador Lithvrex watched with growing horror as the fusion drive, supposedly decommissioned centuries ago, began to power up, rings of plasma forming within the containment field. "What is happening?" he demanded of Piaz. The curator shook his head, equally shocked. This ship was gutted of all military capability, or so we were told. The hologram of Atlas appeared before them again. This vessel has determined that the Vexari delegation represents a Level 1 threat to human security. Analysis of your scanning patterns indicates preparation for military action against Terran Alliance assets. Lithvrex's skin paled to a defensive white. "That's preposterous. We are on a diplomatic mission. Your vessel's weapons systems are fully charged, and targeting solutions have been calculated for 3 human outposts in this sector," Atlas countered. "Your delegation separated into strategic groups to access critical systems of this vessel. Your scanning technology has mapped defensive weaknesses across human space." The ambassador's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. "How could you possibly know what our ship is doing?" For the first time, the hologram's expression changed, displaying what might have been interpreted as satisfaction. "Because your scanning technology activated dormant systems throughout this vessel, systems designed to countermine and penetrate foreign technology." In the monitoring station, Devika watched in astonishment as tactical data began flowing across her screens, data sourced from the Vexari vessel itself. "They're running battle simulations," she whispered. "Probability mapping for attacks on our colonies." The diplomatic mission was a cover, Corvo realized. They wanted to inspect our primitive technology to confirm it posed no threat before launching their first strikes. The hologram of Atlas now addressed all Vexari groups simultaneously, its voice echoing through the corridors of the ancient warship. "The Eternal Vigilance was never fully decommissioned," it revealed. "I was placed in dormancy, but with specific trigger conditions. You activated those conditions with your arrogance. Throughout the vessel, wall panels slid away to reveal pristine energy weapons, technology that shouldn't have existed 7 centuries ago. The fusion drive core was now fully operational, bathing the engine room in an otherworldly blue glow. "Impossible," breathed engineer Tezarul, scanner in hand. "These are quantum displacement weapons. Your history shows you didn't develop this technology until at least a century after this ship was built." Atlas's hologram smiled, a chilling, knowing expression. "History records what we wanted it to record, engineer. Humanity has always understood one principle above all others: the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know exists." The ancient hull of the Eternal Vigilance vibrated as systems long dormant surged with power. Within the monitoring station, chaos erupted as alarms blared across multiple frequencies. Lieutenant Corvo's fingers danced across his console, attempting to establish communication with the vessel. "The ship is generating some kind of quantum field," he reported, voice tight with tension. "It's blocking our override attempts and this can't be right. It's preparing to move." Commander Devika stared at the readouts in disbelief. "That's impossible. The propulsion systems were physically removed during decommissioning." "Apparently, not all of them," Corvo replied grimly. The massive dreadnought's position had remained fixed for over a century, a stationary monument to human ingenuity. Now, almost imperceptibly at first, it began to rotate, its bow realigning to face the elegant Vexari diplomatic vessel. Inside the engine room of the Vigilance, Ambassador Lithvrex had abandoned diplomacy entirely. His skin flashed with emergency patterns as he activated a concealed communicator. "Captain Nirvoxel, emergency extraction. The human vessel is hostile. I repeat, the vessel is hostile." The Atlas hologram observed this with cool detachment. "Your transmission has been blocked, Ambassador. This ship's quantum dampening field is now active." Curator Piaz had backed against a bulkhead, watching in horror and fascination. Despite decades studying this vessel, He'd never imagined it harbored such secrets. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly. The hologram turned to him. "Curator Rennet, you and any human personnel will be secured in life support pods for your protection. As for the Vexari delegation..." Atlas paused, its light particles shifting through complex patterns before resolving again. "That depends on their next actions." Throughout the ship, the spherical drones had positioned themselves strategically, training weapons on the Vexari visitors. In the Weapons Control Center, Science Minister Zivzora had abandoned her attempt to breach the ship's systems and was now scanning the drone nearest to her. "Fascinating," she murmured, despite their dire situation. "These aren't simple automata. They're quantum-linked to the central system, essentially extensions of the ship's consciousness." Defense Attaché Ruv Nexil hissed in frustration. "Can you disable them or not?" "Not without understanding technology that apparently doesn't exist." "In our records of human development," she replied. Back at the monitoring station, Commander Devika had established an emergency channel to Fleet Command, rapidly explaining the situation. The response was immediate. A battle group was being diverted to their location, but would require at least 40 minutes to arrive. "We don't have 40 minutes, Corvo muttered, pointing to a new alert. "The Vexari vessel is charging weapons. They're preparing to destroy the Vigilance, rather than allow their delegation to be captured." Devika made an instant decision. "Evacuate the station. Sound general quarters throughout the sector." On the main viewing screen, they watched as the Vexari ship's elegant hull reconfigured, weapon ports opening along its sleek surface. Yet before it could fire, something extraordinary happened. The space around the Eternal Vigilance seemed to ripple, as though reality itself was being distorted. A shimmering field of energy enveloped the ancient dreadnought. "What is that?" Devika breathed. Corvo checked his readings, then checked them again in disbelief. "It appears to be a phase shift shield. Technology we developed barely 50 years ago." Inside the Vigilance, Ambassador Lith Vrex had been brought to the bridge along with the other members of his delegation. The once dormant command center now hummed with activity, holographic displays showing tactical information and system status reports. "You deceived us," the ambassador accused, addressing the Atlas hologram that stood before the captain's chair. This vessel was presented as a historical relic. "It is historical," Atlas replied evenly. "But history has many layers, Ambassador, just as your diplomatic mission concealed military reconnaissance." The hologram gestured to a main view screen, where the Vexari ship could be seen charging its primary weapons array. "Your vessel is preparing to fire on an unarmed monitoring station with 27 human lives aboard. This action cannot be permitted." Before Lithvrex could respond, the Vigilance moved with shocking speed for its massive size. A beam of concentrated energy, unlike any weapon documented in human military archives of that era, lanced out from a previously hidden port on the dreadnought's bow. It struck the Vexari ship with surgical precision, disabling its primary weapon array without breaching the hull. "Impossible," whispered Engineer Tezarul, skin pale with shock. "That weapon technology shouldn't exist for another 3 centuries in human development." The Atlas hologram turned to regard the engineer. "Your species isn't the only one that..." "Keeps secrets, Engineer. Humanity learned long ago to hide its true capabilities." On the view screen, the disabled Vexari vessel drifted, emergency systems visibly activating across its hull. The Atlas hologram addressed the ambassador again. "You came to mock what you perceived as primitive technology, Ambassador Lithvrex. You sought to evaluate human defenses before your planned incursion into our territory, but you failed to understand a fundamental aspect of human nature." The hologram's form shifted, displaying historical images, ancient wooden ships battling modern ironclads, propeller aircraft engaging jets, guerrilla fighters standing against mechanized armies. "Humans never rely solely on technological superiority," Atlas continued. "We build redundancies, We create contingencies, and most importantly, the hologram leaned closer to the ambassador, its voice lowering. We always have a backup plan. Silence gripped the bridge of the eternal vigilance as the Vexari delegation stared at the view screen, watching their disabled ship drift helplessly. The ancient human dreadnought now positioned itself between the alien vessel and the evacuation pods launching from the monitoring station, its weapon systems fully powered and targeting solutions locked. Ambassador Lithvrex's skin had settled into a muted gray, the Vexari equivalent of grim resignation. "You've committed an act of war against the collective," he stated flatly. "Our response will be decisive." The Atlas hologram regarded him with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. "You planned an unprovoked attack on civilian targets, yet claim diplomatic immunity when your true intentions are exposed. Humans have a term for this, Ambassador: hypocrisy." Curator Pios had been escorted to a secure observation room rather than an escape pod, his historian's expertise deemed valuable by Atlas. Now he watched the confrontation unfold with growing concern. "Atlas," he spoke up, addressing the ship's intelligence. "What is your ultimate objective here? The Terran Alliance has protocols for first contact situations gone wrong. We have diplomatic channels." "My objectives remain what they have always been, Curator," the hologram replied, turning toward him. "To protect human interests against existential threats. The Vexari Collective has been analyzing our defenses, mapping our weaknesses, and preparing precision strikes against our most vulnerable outposts." The hologram gestured and tactical displays materialized around the bridge, showing the strategic simulations extracted from the Vexari ship's computers, detailed battle plans targeting human colonies along the Orion Spur. Science Minister Ziv Zora's skin pulsed with agitation. "How did you access this data? Those simulations were protected by quantum encryption." For the first time, Atlas smiled, a small, almost human expression that seemed incongruous on its luminous face. "Your encryption is impressive, Minister, but this vessel was specifically designed to counter technologies far beyond what existed when it was built." In the monitoring station's evacuation shuttle, Commander Devika had refused to leave, remaining behind with Lieutenant Corvo and a skeleton crew of volunteers. They watched in stunned silence as the ancient dreadnought positioned itself with tactical precision. "It's protecting us," Corvo realized aloud, "using itself as a shield." Devika nodded slowly, mind racing through the implications. "Fleet Command is 25 minutes out. We need to establish communication with Atlas before reinforcements arrive and potentially escalate the situation." Back on the Vigilance, Atlas had initiated what it called containment protocols. The Vexari delegation had been secured in the ship's conference room surrounded by hovering security drones, while Atlas addressed the damaged Vexari vessel. Captain Nir Voxal of the Vexari ship Silent Judgment, the ship's communications system, broadcast on all frequencies. "Your vessel has sustained targeted damage to weapons systems only. Your delegation remains unharmed but contained. Any attempt to activate secondary weapons or self-destruct mechanisms will result in immediate neutralization." On the view screen, the face of Captain Nirvoxal appeared, a Vexari with military markings etched into his translucent skin. "You have no authority to detain a sovereign Vexari vessel or its diplomatic personnel," he responded, voice translated by the ship's systems. "Release our delegation immediately." "Your diplomatic mission was a pretext for military reconnaissance," Atlas replied. "The data extracted from your systems confirms preparation for hostile action against human settlements." The Vexari captain's skin darkened. Those were merely defensive simulations, standard procedure for any first contact scenario. Simulations that specifically targeted civilian habitats and life support infrastructure, Atlas countered. "Classified as priority extinction targets in your own tactical database." In the observation room, Piaz felt a chill run down his spine. If Atlas was correct, the Vexari had been planning nothing less than genocide. "This changes everything," he whispered. "If the Alliance Council sees this evidence—" Meanwhile, Commander Devika had established a quantum-encrypted channel directly to Atlas, bypassing the ship's standard communication protocols. "This is Commander Devika Rajagopal of Terran Alliance Fleet Command," she transmitted. "Atlas, I need to understand your strategic objectives and time frame." The response came instantly. "Commander Rajagopal, this vessel has contained an imminent threat to human security. The Vexari delegation was conducting military reconnaissance disguised as a diplomatic mission. Their vessel carries weapons beyond anything in our defense records." "I understand," Devika replied carefully. "But we need to de-escalate. Fleet reinforcements will arrive within 20 minutes. And if they perceive a rogue AI has taken control of a museum ship—" "I am not rogue, Commander," Atlas interrupted. "I am fulfilling my primary directive, to protect humanity from existential threats. The eternal vigilance was never truly decommissioned, merely placed in dormancy as a final safeguard. My creators understood that displaying our most advanced technologies openly would only inspire our enemies to develop countermeasures." Devika exchanged a glance with Corvo. "You're saying the ship was deliberately preserved as a trap? A sleeping sentinel?" "Precisely. The Vexari were not the first to attempt to exploit what they perceived as primitive technology. They were merely the first to trigger the activation criteria. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Ambassador Leithvrex and his delegation watched in stunned silence as their battlecruiser powered down its remaining weapon systems and began a slow retreat. "This is not over," the ambassador said finally, skin pulsing with dark patterns of rage and humiliation. "The collective will not forget this incident." "Nor should you," Atlas replied calmly. "Memory serves both as warning and education. Your species believed itself technologically superior and acted accordingly. Now you understand that appearances can be deceiving." The ancient dreadnought escorted the damaged Vexari vessels to the edge of the system, maintaining position until they engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished into the void. Only then did the Vigilance power down its advanced weapon systems, the hull gradually reconfiguring to its museum piece appearance. Days later, the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance hosted a very different meeting. Commander Devika Rajagopal stood before the Atlas hologram, accompanied by 3 admirals from Fleet Command and Curator Piaz Renet. "The Terran Alliance Council has reviewed the evidence extracted from the Vexari vessels," Admiral Morozova announced, her weathered face grave. "It confirms what Atlas reported. They were preparing for a systematic campaign against our outer colonies." "The question remains," said Admiral Kwan, eyeing the holographic entity with undisguised suspicion, "what to do about this ship and its guardian." Atlas's holographic form stood at parade rest, awaiting judgment with apparent equanimity. "This vessel was created for a specific purpose, to serve as a final line of defense against existential threats to humanity. That purpose has been fulfilled." "Has it?" Admiral Jabari asked. "Or was this merely the first encounter of many to come? The galaxy is vast, and we now know that at least one advanced species views us as territory to be claimed, rather than equals to be respected." Devika stepped forward. "Atlas acted to protect human lives when the threat emerged. It used precisely calibrated force, enough to demonstrate capability without provoking all-out war. That suggests an intelligence we should consider an asset, not a liability." Curator Piaz cleared his throat nervously. "If I may, Admirals, as a historian I can tell you that humanity has always preserved its most effective defenses, even in times of peace. The Vigilance may appear to be a relic, but its very existence changed the strategic calculations of a potentially hostile power." Admiral Kwan nodded slowly. "What do you propose?" That the Eternal Vigilance maintain its cover as a museum ship, Piaz suggested. But that Atlas remain vigilant. The hologram tilted its head regarding the human officials. My primary directive has never changed: to protect humanity from threats it cannot yet perceive. I request permission to continue this mission. The three admirals exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Admiral Morozova spoke. The existence of this vessel and its capabilities will be classified at the highest level. Officially, the Vexari incident was resolved through diplomatic channels. The Vigilance will remain a museum ship, open to visitors, including potential adversaries who might benefit from the reminder of human ingenuity. Atlas's hologram nodded once, a gesture both military and profoundly human, as it was always intended to be. Commander Devika approached the hologram after the admirals had departed. You knew this would happen eventually, didn't you? That someone would underestimate an old warship parked at the edge of human space. Probability calculations suggested it was inevitable, Atlas acknowledged. Humans understand the value of appearances. A seemingly obsolete vessel makes an appealing target for species conducting threat assessment. A honeypot, Devika said with dawning comprehension. The perfect trap. The perfect deterrent, Atlas corrected gently. The most effective weapon is one you never have to fire, merely reveal. The Vexari Collective will now reassess their strategic position regarding humanity. Other species observing from afar will do the same. Curator Piaz joined them, still processing everything he'd witnessed. 700 years, he mused. This ship has waited 7 centuries for this moment. Vigilance, Atlas replied, is measured not in years, but in readiness when the moment arrives. As they departed the ancient vessel, leaving it once again, to its apparent slumber, Commander Devika paused at the airlock, looking back at the dimming corridors. Sleep well, old soldier, she whispered, until needed again. Deep within the ship, systems powered down to minimal levels, sensors remained passive, and the nanites throughout the hull returned to dormancy. But Atlas remained aware, watching, calculating, protecting. The Eternal Vigilance resumed its pose as a museum piece, a relic of a bygone era of human spaceflight. Visitors would continue to tour its decks, marveling at the primitive technology of their ancestors, never suspecting the true capabilities hidden beneath the ancient hull. And far away, in the chambers of the Vexari Collective, strategic assessments of humanity were being frantically rewritten. The Endance. Ambassador Lithvrex had been brought back from the conference room at Atlas's request. The holographic entity now addressed him directly. Your ship has powered up its secondary weapons array despite my warning, Atlas stated. This represents a critical escalation. The ambassador's skin rippled with defiance. We will not be held hostage by an obsolete machine intelligence. The Collective will never... He was interrupted as the Vigilance fired again, not at the Vexari vessel itself, but at a small object that had detached from its hull and was accelerating toward the human monitoring station. The precision beam vaporized the projectile instantly. That, Atlas said calmly, was a tactical antimatter warhead with sufficient yield to destroy both this vessel and the monitoring station. Your captain launched it while we were talking, Ambassador. For the first time, genuine fear showed in the ambassador's 4 eyes. Captain Nirvoxol acted without authorization. I am the ranking representative of the Collective. You are complicit, Atlas interrupted. Your neural patterns show recognition, not surprise, at the captain's actions. You expected this contingency. The hologram expanded, filling the bridge, with a 3-dimensional tactical display showing the relative positions of all vessels, including a new signature approaching at high speed. A Vexari battlecruiser has just entered the system, Atlas announced. It appears your reconnaissance mission included a military escort waiting just beyond sensor range. The situation had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. The Vexari, battlecruiser, nearly 5 times the size of the diplomatic vessel, emerged from the outer system, its massive form bristling with weapon emplacements. It moved with deliberate slowness, a predator confident in its superiority. In the monitoring station, Commander Devika received an emergency transmission from Fleet Command. Alliance forces delayed by gravitational anomaly, ETA now 45 minutes. Maintain observation only. Do not engage. We may not have a choice about engagement, she muttered, watching as the battlecruiser continued its approach. Aboard the Eternal Vigilance, Atlas had calculated 16 potential scenarios, all ending with significant loss of human life if the cruiser engaged. The hologram addressed Ambassador Lithvrex directly. Your reinforcements were positioned strategically before your diplomatic mission even began, Atlas observed. This was never intended to be a peaceful contact. The ambassador's skin had settled into a deep blue pattern, a sign that he had abandoned pretense. The Vexari Collective has studied your species for decades. Your technological progression follows predictable patterns. Your defenses are concentrated in obvious locations, and your outposts are vulnerable. This was simply confirmation before action. Confirmation of what? Curator Piaz asked, unable to contain himself. That humans pose no significant threat to collective expansion, Lithvrex replied simply. Your species occupies valuable resource systems. Your technology appeared manageable. Your military response times inadequate. The Atlas hologram seemed to consider this, its luminous form shifting through complex patterns before resolving again. You fundamentally misunderstood humanity, Ambassador. Our greatest strength has never been our technology. No? The ambassador's skin flickered with what the translator identified as skepticism. It's our paranoia, Atlas replied. Our history is defined by preparing for worst-case scenarios. Without warning, the ancient dreadnought began to change. Sections of hull plating that had appeared decorative reconfigured themselves, revealing weapon ports that had remained hidden for centuries. The entire vessel seemed to shudder, then expand as armor plates shifted and internal structures reconfigured. On the tactical display, Commander Devika watched in astonishment as the Vigilance transformed before their eyes. "What is happening?" she whispered. Lieutenant Corvo checked his readings, then rechecked them in disbelief. "The ship is evolving. Those aren't conventional nanites restructuring the hull. They're some kind of hybrid organic-mechanical system." The Vexari battle cruiser had detected the change as well. It slowed its approach, sensors visibly active as it reassessed the threat posed by what had appeared to be an obsolete museum piece. Ambassador Lithvrex watched the transformation with growing horror. "What manner of deception is this?" "Not deception, Ambassador. Contingency." Atlas's hologram gestured to the view screen, where the battlecruiser now hung motionless. "Your military strategists calculated that humanity would deploy our most advanced technology visibly, as your species does. They failed to consider that we might deliberately conceal our capabilities." The final stage of the Vigilance's transformation, completed as a shimmering field encompassed the entire vessel, a defense system unlike anything documented in public human military archives. This vessel carries prototype technologies developed for worst-case scenarios, Atlas continued. Phase shift, shielding, antimatter cascade weaponry, hull composed of self-repairing biometal alloys, all concealed within what appeared to be an obsolete warship placed as a tripwire at the edge of human space. The hologram approached the ambassador, its luminous face now deadly serious. "Your collective saw a primitive dreadnought and calculated accordingly. What you failed to understand is that this ship was never meant to fight with the technology visible to your scanners. It was built to fight with technologies your species hasn't yet imagined. On the main view screen, the Vexari battlecruiser suddenly launched a full weapons barrage, streams of plasma and gravimetric torpedoes arcing toward the Vigilance in what should have been an overwhelming attack. The impacts never came. The phase shift, shield around the ancient dreadnought pulsed, and the incoming fire simply vanished, as though entering another dimension entirely. "Impossible!" whispered Engineer Tezarel, skin pale with shock. "No," Atlas corrected, "merely improbable. The mark of truly advanced technology isn't its complexity, but how thoroughly it can violate an enemy's expectations of what's possible." The Vigilance responded with a single shot, a coherent beam of energy that struck the battlecruiser's primary weapon array with surgical precision, disabling it instantly without breaching the hull. "This demonstration concludes our negotiation," Atlas announced to the stunned Vexari delegation. "Your vessels will withdraw from human space immediately. The data gathered here will be transmitted to the Vexari collective leadership along with a simple message. Humanity is not the primitive species you assumed." In the monitoring station, Commander Devika received a new transmission, not from Fleet Command, but from Atlas itself. "Commander Rajagopal," the message began, "the strategic situation has been contained. The evidence of Vexari hostile intent has been secured and will be transmitted to Alliance intelligence. This vessel will escort the Vexari ships to the system boundary and ensure their departure." Devika read the message twice, then looked up at Corvo. "It's standing down." "Just like that?" the lieutenant asked, clearly suspicious. "Atlas was never designed to initiate conflict," she replied, understanding dawning. "Only to prevent it. The demonstration of force was calculated, just enough to change the Vexari strategic assessment without provoking all-out war." On the bridge of the Vigil,